Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, the podcast where we take a long, hard look at some of our favorite action movies from the era of Arnold.
Schwarzenegger is the icon of the genre, and we're taking a deep dive into some of these 80s and 90s cult action movies and breaking them all the way down.
Hey, welcome back with episode 3 of Red Dawn.
So, I feel like things are about to get real interesting on the podcast.
Yes.
Eric has put down a bottle of wine already.
Yes.
We started another bottle of wine.
I have started another bottle of wine.
What is it?
I am a bit of I am a wine lover. It is a Larkspur Pinot Noir.
Okay.
It is from Oregon, also from the Pacific Northwest. I love Northwest wines. I'm a little biased.
I think it's a better climate for grapes than like California.
On the east side of the Cascades, it gets very arid, and it's just the perfect environment for wines. And Washington makes amazing wines. This is 2018.
Okay.
I love wine, so I apologize.
Man, tell us.
I'm a super
educate
nerd.
our listeners.
Well, so okay. Do we want to? This is going to turn into a wine podcast.
All two of you. Listen up. No, I'm sipping on an old fashioned that I made, Buffalo Trace Old Fashioned, rock solid. I'm trying to catch up with Eric.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I know.
get there. I'm gonna start to do a shot in between.
Apparently, this is a race.
No. I will try to bring us up to speed on the plot here.
Please
What's
do.
going on this shit? Well, first of all, hold on. Before we get to the movie, I feel like this situation within this movie is such a random thing that's happening. Like, I feel like it's impossible, like, to maybe know how you would ever respond if you were in this situation. But I want to know how you would respond, Eric. Would you go like Stone Cold Killer Commando, or would you be like a collaborator or somewhere in between?
I would definitely not be a collaborator. It's just that is not in my frame of reference. I think I would probably go out in a blaze of glory. I think I would be one of the first ones to die. But it would be because I was rushing the enemy force initially.
Yeah.
Because there's no thought, no
so you would have been that dude like
premeditation.
who died on day one?
Day one. I would be a day one death. There's no question. But it wasn't because I would be cowering in a corner. It would be because, like, fuck all y'all. I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think the Russians or the communists within this movie, they like miscalculated what Americans are like.
Yes.
Because Americans don't want anybody telling them what to do. No. Whether they're telling them a smart thing to do or not. They don't want anybody telling them what to do.
Never.
So I feel like, it's only natural that it's going to, you're going to have some bumps in the road.
Oh,
trying to control people.
In this instance, I feel like I am the consummate American where if we do get invaded, I'm just going to go out in a blaze of glory.
You ready for the shit to go down?
I am I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to go for it.
Okay.
I'm not going to make it long because I also am really prissy and I don't want to rough it and I don't want to tough it out. And so
I'd rather die than camp.
I would rather die than go camping. That's basically what it boils down to.
Fuck all this. Kill me now.
Kill me now. I'm going to take as many of you as I can with me, but I am not going to go camping tonight.
Oh, my God. So, within the world of Red Dawn.
Yeah, oh, yes.
What we got is this small, sleepy Colorado town. The commies come dropping out of the sky, paratroopers. The kids of town are in high school or whatever. They see it happening out the window. So a small group of them led by Patrick Swayze and his brother Charlie Sheen, they escape out into the mountains where they're like content to just sort of hole up and hide and wait for this whole thing to blow over. But they decided after like a month, let's go back in and see what the hell's happening, because no one's come to get us and tell us it's all over yet.
And they don't have a working radio.
Right. So they go back into town. They find that like the town's being held under a communist rule. They're told that it's like Russians and Cubans who invaded or some shit. They've taken all the troublemakers, the potential troublemakers, to be re-educated.
But then they've killed other ones, so it's not clear who they re-educate and who do they just flat out murder.
But so they go and they find their dad, Harry Dean Stanton, who tells them, "Avenge me!" who tells them, like, you see all those years that I was abusing you and everything? This is why. Because one day the commies were going to drop from the sky and you were going to be ready.
Every man in the city kind of assumed that they were going to be invaded. We've
all been waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
But he tells them basically, you're going to have to fend for yourself now. They link up with another friends of the family, the Masons, who give them a couple of young nubile girls to hold on to, hotties, and they send them back up into the mountains. Some Russians come up just on like a sightseeing tour, it seems like.
Everybody's a tourist.
They kill those guys. So now they're like in a spot where, okay, now we've killed people. They're probably going to be hunting for us. We're going to have to either figure out what we're doing here. Are we going to keep fighting? Are we going to try to hide? Whatever. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. And so at this point, we cut back down to Calumet, back in the city, where the evil commies have set up their home base, and we cut to just, I don't know, like inside a building, and it's Commander Bea and somebody else, and they're interrogating the mayor of the town, who just happens to be Daryl's father. Now,
did you recognize dude, the mayor?
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, like, he is like the consummate. I mean, like, I don't even remember his name. Like,
hold on. The actor's name is Lane Smith.
Lane Smith, and he is always playing kind of the douchebag in any movie that he's in.
I remember him mainly, first and foremost, from being like Lois and Clark's boss in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman.
Oh, I remember the show.
He was Perry.
I don't remember
the
him being
editor
Perry.
or whatever
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
Daily
yeah.
Planet. That's my main thing. But he was also the not evil, but he was the rival hockey team coach in Mighty Ducks. He coached the Hawks.
Okay, he was evil. Let's be honest here. He was evil. Anyway, we're getting off track here. The thing that I love about this scene is it just, as always, it goes back to politicians are spineless, right? I mean, like, this is the equivalent of Vichy France, but in Calumet, Colorado.
That's a deep cut for you guys to get on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of World War II shit lately, so I know what's up. But yeah, that's like the puppet government.
The puppet government of France.
Being controlled by the Nazis, yeah. But yeah, so what's Daddy Mayor doing?
So anyway, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe my son would ever be mixed up in something like that. He's not the gorilla type.
That's a great line.
Which was
he's not the gorilla type.
He's not the gorilla type. Because this is the thing that could happen regularly in
I don't have kids, but I feel like, every parent knows that their kid's the gorilla type or not.
I love the idea that a child is born and the
he's
father,
the gorilla type.
He's the gorilla type for sure. Anyway, so Bea says that he knows that he was a student leader, but his dad like doubles down. He's like, no. He's a politician, not a fighter.
He's like, he's a pussy.
Yeah, basically,
he's a pussy. He'd never stand up to you.
Basically, that's exactly what he's saying.
So he's a big old pussy.
Which is just like, oh my God, this guy is like, he's spineless not only politically, but he's also spineless when it comes to defending his son. Which is just embarrassing. But anyway, so the Bea indicates that Daryl is actually a member of an, quote, elite paramilitary organization, an Eagle Scout.
That shit was funny.
It was a great moment. It was a great, and also I think that, I think that was intentional, right?
Oh yeah, like, for sure.
Right.
And that's probably is like that could be the Soviet perception.
Absolutely, right. Like this is the equivalent of the Nazi youth, right?
Yeah,
in America,
for
right?
sure. They're like hyper patriotic young Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, so the dad assures him once again that his son's not a troublemaker. Anyway, Bea goes, okay, well then I need to know who the fucking troublemaker is.
Right, Bea. This is not his first time, I think, interrogating somebody.
Exactly. And so the politician, being the spineless son of a bitch that he is, goes, Well, it runs in some families, which is, oof, that was a tough line.
Yeah.
Because you know what that means.
It's like, the troublemakers' kids are the troublemakers.
Yeah, exactly. So we cut to, and this is a good bit of editing.
Snitching ass. And he's like, oh, that's Community.
Yes.
He's very fortunate to have a shepherd like him.
That's right.
Dude, did you recognize his right-hand man?
No, who was he?
He was Mickey from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the inmate, the fugitive.
Yeah. Oh, my God, that was him?
Yes.
Oh, my God. That went right over my head.
I was like, this dude's familiar. What's he? Oh, he was fucking Mickey the Fugitive.
Amazing. If any Atlanta people down here, there's a major convention that happens in Labor Day weekend called Dragon Con. One of the costumes that I went as was Francis from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
You were Francis?
I went as Francis this year.
Did you have a Pee-wee with you?
Yeah. My friend Jen, she dressed up as Pee-wee Herman.
Gender swap.
Yeah, gender swap Pee-wee. And it was like super unappreciated. But anyway, so they dismiss him for the moment, but we cut to the communists are making prisoners dig graves.
Yeah.
Which is ominous.
But it seemed to be for the dead Russians.
You think that initially.
Because they were caskets. They were like Russian flags draped over them.
Right. Yeah,
or
that's
not Russian
right.
flags, but like the Soviet Union flag.
Yeah, you're right. Because they had the coffins and everything and they prepped them up. And you was like, oh, okay, they're just forcing these people.
That's when it takes a turn, though.
Dude.
And they were blasting the Russian/Soviet national anthem, which to me is like low-key a great national anthem, though. Like the musically, it's a banger. I remember that shit in Rocky IV when they were blasting it when Drago came out to fight.
It's an epic, like you just want to like pound your fist, right?
And then when they were getting ready to launch the Red October and Hunt for Red October, and they're singing it, I'm like, man, this song is fucking. It's like low key better than the Star Spangled Banner or whatever. But
yeah.
Anyway,
so anyway, but this is an interesting point of historical incongruity. Cubans and Russians don't celebrate the 21-gun salute.
Okay.
So when they do the 21-gun salute, it was like, ooh, that's not actually correct.
That's
not done in Russia or in Cuba. I actually looked it up. That's just a bit of tidbit for you.
We're here for the tidbits.
We do. We love the tidbits.
That's why I do this.
If the only thing that you take away from this podcast is that Russians and Cubans don't do the 21-gun salute.
Strictly for the tidbits.
I have done my job. Charlie Sheen is watching this through his binocular, and yes, a makeshift ghillie suit, which
he's made himself a ghillie suit.
You and I both, independently of each other, took notes. You gotta love the makeshift ghillie suits. Like it's just fucking great. At this point, we see that all the people who've been digging these graves are lined up in front of a larger mass grave.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. At which point they start singing "America the Beautiful," which, again, is a great song, but my first thought is why not the national anthem?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I would think that in that moment, the national anthem is what I would sing, but they went with America the Beautiful.
Guess so. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they don't know the lyrics.
I don't know, but anyway, it was a choice that jumped out to me. Anyway.
They also turned around and like faced the firing squad. It wasn't even a fire. They like rolled in some big old tanks.
Yeah, it was. It was like this really. It wasn't a traditional firing squad.
They also had oddly like this other large group of townspeople. It seemed like they're off to the side, like witnessing all of this.
And it felt like they had forced them to be there.
Right. Sure.
To force them to watch what was going on, just like because they were so cold-blooded. So Bea orders the execution of the prisoners, and they're all mowed down with way too much firepower. They just did not need this much firepower. And so, but in a rare moment of humanity, Mr. Mayor, Daryl's dad, is actually like he's like horrified about what just happened.
It's a strange scene.
Yeah, it is.
Like it seemed to catch the mayor off guard that they killed all those people.
Right, exactly.
But also, like you said, there was like a mass grave sort of situation going on here. I don't know. I don't doubt the mayor probably didn't know about it.
I feel like the mayor sort of like when he was like being a snitch, thought, oh, they'll just be punished. Maybe they'll get 40 lashes or something.
But it seemed like it's like the worst of the troublemakers.
Yeah, exactly.
And killed, including Harry Dean Stanton, Charlie Sheen, and Patrick Swayze's dad among them.
So now the Avenge Me line actually...
Avenge me!
Avenge me
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense.
Hey, Dad.
Now there is something to be avenged, finally.
I felt like, though, it's just weird they would even be like, we bury our own like fallen heroes right near where we also have the mass grave.
This is like the first of many moments in the movie where it's just like the geography of where things are just makes no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way the Russians would bury fallen heroes, basically, next to a mass grave of, the enemy.
I don't think so.
No, there's just no way. But I feel like it was just an economic decision on this.
Oh, yeah, we can't build like multiple locations
Right,
here.
exactly.
This is it.
Anyway, that night, and this is a theme that comes up over the course of the movie, everybody's crying back at camp.
Yes.
Right? There's so much crying in this movie.
That's why I had texted you about this while I was watching the movie, where I felt like this feels like high school like drama theater productions, where it's like these kids are just acting their hearts out. They're acting as hard as anyone has ever acted before. And they're like, we're lots of hugging, lots of crying, and like, look how hard we're acting.
Yeah, and it feels so out of place at this point, given what they've already been through. But the way I took it is it's coming into the larger sort of narrative of the loss of innocence, right? So there is this weird undercurrent that keeps poking through the movie of this notion of an anti-war sentiment that is blended in with this pro-America war sentiment, right?
It was a platoon. The first casualty of war is innocence.
Right, exactly.
Charlie Sheen.
Oh man. I don't know that. I mean, like, that would be a great movie to talk. That's like,
it's not really an action movie. It's like
movie.
Action movies are, to me, where I draw the line on action movies is like gratuitous violence.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
like
this movie
celebrated violence as opposed to violence with consequences. And like lots of titties usually, but not in this movie.
No, there's not.
But yeah, like lots of bad language and killing that's glorified, like glorified violence. That's action movies to me.
There's no question about that. And there's no question that at this point in the movie, Swayze's like, no more fucking crying.
Yeah, he's channeling his dad. What his dad had told them before.
100%. And now this is the point. It's actually a really poignant point. Sorry. This is
the wine is working.
The wine is working. It's everybody. This is a really poignant point in the movie because this is the turning point. This is when no longer there's no innocence left, right?
Yes.
And this is about halfway through the movie. This is a point where they've stopped being children and they've started being soldiers, right?
Sure.
And Swayze at this point repeats his dad's words from early in the movie. He's like, I don't ever want to see you cry again, right?
And he had this weird thing he kept saying to everyone, like, turn it into something else.
Turn it into something else, exactly.
Where it's like, take all the sadness or the anger or whatever and like turn it into aggression, I guess, towards the other guys. But I'm kind of with Swayze. I feel like now is the time, like, fucking take action, like, fuck these dudes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we've witnessed them just, like, executing people. Like, fuck this.
Fucking challenge. Now is the time to go full on, right?
It doesn't really feel like rescue's, like, on the way.
No.
At this point, like, it's been however long it's been, a couple months or something. It's like, no. We got to, like, take matters into our own hands and do something.
This is the true turning point of the movie. Like, this is a real inflection point. And I mean, we've been joking a lot, but because it's sort of a weird scene, but it's also actually a really poignant moment, right? Cut to a tank driving into a gas station to refuel.
Like, what kind of gas does this motherfucker like have?
I don't know.
Did tanks tank just regular old gas or diesel?
I meant to look this up and I didn't. But maybe it takes diesel.
I'm gonna trust the screenwriters on this one.
But it's still the scene of a tank driving.
Because it was like that ding ding.
Ding, ding. I mean, it was it was unintentionally hilarious. There's no way for that moment to not be hilarious, even if it was logistically correct. Out of nowhere, for no reason, no context, Jennifer Grey rides up in a bicycle with a picnic basket.
A
picnic basket. and the commanding officer. And again, this is not the first time that.
Well, the dudes immediately start to like grab her.
Oh, immediately!
Like, hey, mama.
I don't know what it is about Jennifer Grey's character, but she apparently.
I mean, I see it, but like
Russians just cannot keep their hands off of her.
The Russians, it's like Spanish fly for Russians.
And so it takes their commanding officer to say, leave her alone, but take her stuff.
Take her shit.
And so they take her picnic basket.
Wasn't it very fortunate that it all worked out that way?
I mean,
what was going to happen if they didn't take her shit?
There is so many variables in this scene that I'm like, this is ridiculous. This scene was too far for me. This was the scene that broke my suspension of disbelief.
I'm sorry. I jumped the gun and got us ahead of ourselves a little bit. But yeah, they take the basket, right? The basket.
Oh yeah, we are.
And then the basket explodes inside the tank.
That's correct. Yeah. At which point,
and then it's like, wait a second. What the hell? Was it just going to blow up in the bicycle if they didn't show up right on time?
I know, exactly. Like, she pulled the thing on she pulled the pin on the
Maybe
grenades.
it's like when they yanked the basket away from her, it like yanked some pins out or something?
Yeah, or something.
I don't know.
How did they know that they were just going to steal the basket and not, like, rape her? I mean, there was so many things
so much could have gone wrong.
And so she goes running off into this field randomly. Well, I mean, seemingly randomly.
Right.
And so
the soldiers are not shooting.
No, they're not. They're just chasing after her.
One of them pulls out a knife and they're like, let's get her.
Like, who goes to a gunfight with a knife? But so she runs away. They chase after her, and they all pop out of hidden holes, Vietnam War style, and mow down these Russian troops.
I actually loved that moment, though, when they popped out of the holes just because they were so invisible when you're seeing, and they're like, oh, shit. It was like some Robin Hood type shit.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hell yes. Like,
it was a great moment, but everything about that scene was so choreographed.
Of course.
The chances of that happening that was the moment, that scene pulled me out of the movie more than any other moment in the movie.
It was too perfectly planned and executed or whatever?
Exactly. There was just too much. But they do. They hop out of the holes, they mow down the bad guys, and now everything has changed.
Yeah, we got the montage.
Yeah, we get the montage, right. So we cut to a scene where a bunch of commies are about to murder a bunch of civilians. Right as they're about to fire, here comes the kids. They mow the motherfuckers down, right?
They were making first of all, the people about to be shot had the worst fake tears ever. Like
that straight up
Vaseline on their faces or whatever. And then these kids were making like $1 million grenade throws, like from fucking 100 feet away. They're chucking grenades into the little hatch on the tank or whatever, and like it's shit's blowing up or whatever. It was awesome.
I mean, straight up hole in one. I called out when I was watching this. And he throws it, and it goes right in the fucking hatch. I called out, hole in one! Anyway, so on the ridgeline, Thomas Howell raises his gun, and he yells, Wolverines!
Hell yes.
And if you weren't paying attention at the beginning of the movie, you would have zero context for why he is shouting the name of a wild,
I didn't think about that ever because I never thought of anyone. But yeah, if you were watching this, it's unlikely you noticed the high school mascot.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, but that's probably the most iconic moment of the movie, right?
Everybody knows Wolverines.
Wolverines!
Like, Wolverines! If you don't know Red Dawn, anything else about the movie, what you do know is Wolverines,
For
right?
sure.
But then, like, when I'm watching it now, again, I've seen it a bunch of times, and so it's sort of like in my DNA.
Yeah, sure.
But when I'm watching it now for our podcast, I'm like, wait, there's zero context for why he's shouting Wolverines right now.
Well, this came up on the podcast we did before for Terminator.
Uh-huh.
I was watching that movie with someone who somehow had never seen Terminator before. And when the scene comes when they're in the nightclub and the Terminator and the Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor are all like coming together, and it turns out that Kyle Reese is actually there to protect her, the person that I was watching with was like surprised, like, oh shit, like I thought he was there to kill her too. And I'm like, it's weird to think, if you were watching this cold and no context, what you might imagine, and so watching it cold, no context, you might be like, why is this fucker screaming Wolverine?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, what? I don't get it
and
at all.
They go back and they explain it retroactively.
They do later on,
Yeah, but but out of like without context, it feels like
That's
just
a random word you can choose.
Like, oh, okay, I guess you really love this weird predator. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, or you love the X-Men, which, by this point, why not? I mean, the X-Men was long since around by this point, but so we cut to now it's a squad of soldiers repairing a phone line because I guess presumably at this point they've started their guerrilla tactics.
That's what I was thinking. They probably cut the lines to lure a crew out there to fix it.
That's
to
what
kill
I'm
them.
thinking, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, they're ambushed by our groups, who we now presumably are calling the Wolverines.
With much heavier artillery now.
I don't know where they got it, but they have rocket launchers and grenades and 50 cal machine guns. And then we go to a montage of scenes with all of this destruction. And apparently the shit that they're looting is also spray paint.
Yeah.
Because they're spray painting over everything Wolverines, right? And so
they're doing a really good job for a bunch of kids.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
It's a miracle no one's been killed yet or wounded or whatever.
I know. To this point, everybody has been unscathed. Anyway, we cut to Bea and his right-hand man again, who we've established, surveying a bunch of dead soldiers. And Bea talks about how he's seen this kind of thing in Nicaragua and El Salvador and Cambodia and Angola and Mexico.
This fucker gets around.
I mean, he has been everywhere.
So he's like a communist mercenary, I guess.
I guess so.
He's called into sort of lead revolutions.
Yeah, and so then now we see Jennifer Grey walking out to what I think is I want to name all of my buildings this. The Soviet American Friendship Center.
Of course.
Which I love because it's also written in Cyrillic above it, like the Russians give a shit.
Right.
The
dudes are trying to fuck her.
She's trying to fuck her again. Again, what is it? I mean, you get it.
I get it.
And Jennifer Grey is hot, don't get me wrong, but
the dudes are so horny.
They're so horny for her. Every scene that a Russian is in with her, they really want to fuck her.
Plus, at this point, it's they would notice, I feel if there's suddenly a new hot babe in town.
I agree. Yeah.
Be wait a second. They've been here for months. I don't think people are allowed to move around freely.
No.
Here.
I'm
so
sure
it's wait a second. Where'd this hot babe show up all of a sudden? And it's hey, bring your girlfriend around. And it's what the fuck is
right.
This is already angling for a three-way.
Right. I know. It's just the amount of love that they have, the passion that they have for Jennifer Grey is remarkable. Anyway, so as she walks away, Bea is explaining the situation to a Russian intelligence soldier who has finally showed up, right?
Yes. They're debating the nature of the Wolverine.
The Wolverine, yes, exactly. And it is amazing. Because Bea is apparently the only one who seems to have any sort of grasp on the situation. And he talks about how he's not used to being on this side of an invading force.
Uh-huh.
He's used to being on the side that's doing the invading.
Right.
And he says, hey, maybe, in order to put down the rebellion, we should, mimic the American strategy and, try to win the hearts and minds of the town people.
Right.
And the Russian points out, though, rightly, that the Americans failed to do that in Vietnam.
Bella's right. I feel it's not sustainable.
Right. Exactly.
Unless you have the citizens join your cause, whatever. But the reason why this strategy can never work is because you have to have a reason for the people. You have to have a reason to believe the people there want the government overthrown, I think, which is why you could that was not the case in 1984 America.
Definitely was not the case.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Reagan had people very patriotic or whatever, but
yeah, by 84, patriotism through the roof.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And so, I mean, I get where Bea was coming from a philosophical standpoint or a strategic standpoint.
Right.
But in
for this to work, we can't just be oppressing the people in right. We're not just going to take them to the re-education center and torture them until they join us.
Right. Exactly.
No.
But it is interesting because this is the first scene where we get the sense that Bea is not 100% in this fight.
Right. We're fighting a losing battle.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, Bea says that the advance has kind of stalled out on the front, and they need to try to find a way to keep the morale high on the soldiers.
Yeah, this is like the first indication that we've gotten that there's like almost a larger, bigger war happening elsewhere that we're not seeing.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Which again, we're almost halfway through the movie at this point, and we've been so focused on the local skirmish that we don't have any sort of context for the larger war, and we're just now starting to get a sense that like, oh shit, things are happening outside of Calumet,
Which from the Wolverines' perspective, like that's true. Like they don't know what's happening elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as a movie viewer goes, it sort of just feels like, is this why do the Russians want to conquer Calumet, Colorado so bad?
Right. So anyway, the Russian guy who has just showed up has no contact for the situation. He orders Bea to keep the soldiers safe in the area right now, right?
Yeah.
And that, don't worry, people will forget about the Wolverines any minute now. They're just a flash in the pan.
Of course.
No one's going to remember the Wolverines. At that point, the Friendship Center explodes. It completely explodes. There are so many dead commies everywhere. All of the commies.
The Wolverines are like, they're honey trapping like the shit out of these commies.
This is why they send Jennifer Grey.
All we need is 2 hot babes. And we can topple, the Soviet Union or whatever.
If only we knew this in 1917.
Right.
Anyway.
But the guerrilla campaign is like taking a toll on the foot soldiers because they're like, what's happening?
Right.
And everything like that.
It is classic sort of like American Revolution style, right?
Yeah.
Where we fought guerrilla style and all these lines of British soldiers just kept falling to our unorthodox approaches to combat.
Sure.
Anyway, cut to it is now November. There's a dogfight, I guess, right? Going on?
It seems like there's some fighter jet dogfight happening in the sky.
Right.
And we don't. There's
not
contrails all over like the sky and shit like that, and sound effects that would indicate that there's a thing. But like,
right.
I feel like this is a visual medium, and we need to see it.
Right. Again, we don't really see a lot of what's going on.
Which I also think is sort of like that's probably accurate. Like,
yeah,
they could be at 30,000 or 40,000 feet doing whatever they're doing. Like maybe we couldn't see it, but this is a movie, and it needs to be seen by the audience.
Agreed. Like I guess the verisimilitude of the movie is preserved, but as a movie-going audience, I want a Top Gun moment right now.
For sure. Like at least we got to see a plane falling from the sky.
Exactly. Anyway, Leah Thompson is watching all of this from the ground.
A weird little squat.
Yeah,
she was squatted like as if using the bathroom, but fully clothed.
And it's unfortunate if she was using the restroom, but we're going to assume that she wasn't. Anyway, she sees some sort of explosion. We only hear it. She sees it.
There's this weird like ring of smoke in the sky.
Yeah, there is a ring of smoke.
I can't imagine that's possibly what it looks like if a plane gets shot down.
I don't. It was really confusing at the moment. But anyway, it cuts to her wandering up to the partial wreckage of a crashed parachute. Like
right.
Yeah. And there is a guy unconscious on the ground.
Or asleep. I couldn't tell.
It wasn't clear if he was
napping. He snapped right to attention when she approached, but it's weird, right?
But what's more important than how he wakes up is the fact that it's motherfucking Powers Boo.
Yeah, this is Curly Bill from Tombstone.
From Tombstone. He was in Deadwood and Sin City. I mean, God.
Wow, that's the youngest I've seen him.
It blew me away. I could not believe how young he was because I'm so used to seeing him as because he really came into his own when he was older. Right?
Sure, yeah.
And
he peaked like around 50, probably.
Exactly. But here he is, in his mid-30s, waking up on the ground, and she goes, "Are you American?" And his response is red-blooded with his Texan
That's so
accent.
fucking weird.
Yeah, and I love this moment. I love this scene.
Yes.
Because this proves how bullshit all of these questions are. She goes, "Oh, if you're an American, what's the capital of Texas?" And he correctly answers, Austin. And she goes, "Oh, you're clearly a commie because you know it was Houston."
Wrong, commie. It's Houston.
which is just so funny. Anyway,
I'm so baffled by the fact that he was somehow asleep when, like, I feel like it couldn't have been more than an hour or two removed from falling out of the sky.
right.
And he's like, I'm tired. I'm gonna
take a
catch
nap.
a few
I'm on the
Z's.
ground. Why not? No one's here.
Like, he's still attached to his parachute, it seemed like, and he's like, I'm gonna take a quick nap break.
Once
Get back
again,
to this.
we come back to the timeline of this movie is
yeah.
wonderfully inconsistent. So she points the gun at him. He grabs it, points it away from him, and then suddenly she accepts that he's an American for, I don't know, maybe he grabs the gun in just the right way.
I mean, he's clearly not Russian.
I mean, yeah, he's clearly not.
Like, he'd be the
Rusky.
best, like, spy ever.
So she takes Powers Booth up to the camp, and they feed him, and they ask him a ton of questions about what's going on.
He's like, I'm flying. What are you flying? And he's like, F-15s. And I was probably from Top Gun fandom. I was like fighter jet obsessed when I was young. I was like, oh, F-15. Okay, the Eagle. I was like, not the F-16 Falcon or the F-14 Tomcat. I was like, oh, I knew all the shit. You know what I mean? So I was like, I love this.
Yeah, it was a good moment. And he pulls off his patch, and he gives it to Arturo.
Yeah.
Right? And then Arturo gives him his Russian hat in exchange to keep his head warm.
Yeah, get a little trade.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, this is not sitting well with Patrick Swayze.
Who the fuck is this? You brought some rando?
Like, what is this guy? Anyway, he says that he's U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Tanner. And Swayze asks him how he got shot down and says, I love this. This is one of my favorite parts. It was 5 against 1, and he shot down 4, which is like just pure American, right?
Yes.
He's outnumbered, and he loses ultimately, but he loses because the odds were just too overwhelming.
For sure.
Right? So anyway, this obviously makes Patrick Swayze like, oh, okay, obviously you're good
I
people.
like this guy.
Yeah, I'm not worried about you. And this is the point where finally, halfway, 2/3 of the way through the movie,
For sure.
we finally understand what's going on.
What the fuck is happening?
Because Powers Booth explains what has happened up to this point.
I don't know if it's good storytelling, but it's very realistic that, like, these guys on the ground in Calumet don't know what the fuck is going on. So they need someone to explain it. But and they've been cut off since day one, right?
And so, yeah, actually watching this now as an adult, again, I haven't seen this since, like, I think the early 90s was the last time I watched this movie. It didn't feel inappropriate for exactly the reason that you were saying, because up to this point, one of the questions that have been lingering in the back of my mind the whole time is like, what is going on? Like, what is happening?
Yes.
And so I was so ready for him to just dump a bunch of exposition on top of me.
Colonel Exposition has arrived. He's going to tell us what's going on.
Thank God for Colonel Exposition. So, anyway, here's what happens.
Lieutenant Colonel.
He's not a full colonel. He's just a lieutenant colonel. So he explains that the first wave was paratroopers from planes disguised as commercial charters, which I thought was interesting.
Okay.
It's a lot of money involved, but I guess that could happen.
All right.
Right? Okay. Then
that's what dropped into Calumet, I'm guessing.
I guess that's what had to happen, right? Yeah. But then they use accurate tactical nuclear strikes, which is a mouthful, to take out all of America's nuclear silos.
Yes. I was in South Dakota like a few years ago, and there's randomly, like, right next to Badlands National Park, there was like this National Historic site or whatever that was like an old missile silo that was closed somehow on the day that I came to visit. But normally on days they're open, I think you like tour it, like, and wander through, and it's just crazy. They're just keeping that shit right by the highway. You know what I mean? Like, that's just nuts to me. I feel like this moment though also was the closest they ever came to trying to explain like why Calumet is important, because they said something about, they're seizing all the mountain passes.
Right, exactly.
Or whatever. So maybe a highway or a railroad track or something passes through this town.
So Calumet must have been a mountain pass town. Which
like, if we hold this town, then American troops can't get past the front line.
Exactly.
Whatever.
So anyway, the Cubans and the Nicaraguans, they invade Mexico, and then they take out a bunch of key military positions in Texas and then all across the Midwest. And then they also, and this was really interesting because it involves Canada.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Russians
yeah.
like invade Alaska, and then once they've secured Alaska, go through Canada to get down from the northern part of the country, right?
This was like, it's hard to visualize what all he's talking about.
Right.
And I was like looking at maps and shit like that because he's just basically waving a stick.
Yeah,
like over
just
a
like
grill.
This is
the
it's a
campfire.
makeshift grill, and he goes, "This is the eastern seaboard. This is the western coast."
But this is the point at which I went down the Red Dawn internet rabbit hole.
Yeah,
And it's fucking deep, dude.
really.
Like, people, there's lots of discussions going on about the finer points of the movies and like detailed maps of
Yeah.
what parts of the country were held and what countries were aligned with what side and everything like that. But yeah, it'll come up more later.
We'll get through
Shit that
it.
came out of the rabbit hole, but it is deep. And I'm like, okay, people like put a lot of thought into this movie and whatever the details of it all.
I just remember when I was doing, like, I was watching the movie and prepping for the episode. I paused this and I rewinded this a couple of times just to
right.
make sure, like, I got everything.
Want a mental picture of
Yeah,
it.
like to get a map of what was going on. And basically what happened was after the invasion, like when all the dust settles, free America is west of the Rocky Mountains and the Cascade Mountains, right? And then east of the Mississippi River.
Yeah, so they've split it in half. The
They
country.
basically split America in half, right? And the Ruskies and the Cubans and all the evil commies have somehow claimed all of the middle part of the country for themselves.
Right. And he says
Right.
basically they like, yeah, through their nuclear strikes or whatever, they cut off all the oil flow
Yeah, they cut
into
off
the
the
country.
pipelines.
And they,
that's right.
They
that's
cut
right.
like communications lines or whatever
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So everything's like sort of fully like severed or
Yeah.
whatever.
And then they do some. It's a bit of hand wavy here right now because the Wolverines correctly ask, like, seriously, dog, like, where is everybody else?
Right.
Like,
what is up with Europe?
What is up with Europe? Why aren't they helping us? They've already fought 2 world wars on the continent.
Sure.
They're just going to sit this one out.
I love that also through this whole part, Powers Booth is just pounding whiskey.
Oh, yeah, just hammering it, just like throwing it down.
He's drinking that straight from the bottle. He's
love the-
fucking hammered at this point.
I love the idea, though, that the United Kingdom sits the invasion of the United States out just because, like, we've already done 2 in this century.
Yeah, right.
We've done
right.
our due diligence. We
Yeah.
don't need to do another one. And so, but basically what it comes down to is that after that initial invasion, free America is established on either coast. The commies control the central part of the continent at this point. But we've reached a stalemate,
Yes.
right? Like, no one is making any more advances at this point.
This is the weird part where he's like, but the Russians, they want to take America in one piece.
Right.
It's like, what do they want with
Why?
America?
Right. And then he makes
Is it for like because they want our like grain and shit? It's never clear.
It's not clear to me. And he also makes some sort of vague like reference to the fact that, like, oh, America doesn't want to nuke itself, and so like nuclear weapons are off
I
the
buy
table.
that, right? They're saying the Russians don't want to do any more nukes in America because they want this land like untarnished,
Right.
and America's not going to nuke its own territory, so it's just like turned into a ground war.
Right, exactly. And so I do like that they found an interesting way to get around the concept of, what is it, mutually assured destruction?
Sure,
or whatever the concept is.
yeah.
Because I mean, that's the thing that I was thinking when the movie starts. As an adult, like as a kid, you don't really think about it.
Yeah, you don't care.
But as an adult, like watching this, your first thought is like, why didn't we just nuke each other? And then this is like, okay, this is a good enough reason.
Sure.
For why we're not nuking each other.
We've lost our we've lost our nuclear abilities, it seems like, for the most part.
Right, and Russia doesn't want to lose this territory for reasons that whatever.
Yeah, they're nebulous.
Nebulous reasons, but we take it as Bible that this is true. But anyway, so Patrick Swayze basically demands to know what started the war. And Powers Booth says with his amazing baritone voice, the two toughest kids on the block.
Yeah, sure.
The fight was inevitable.
He said it with enough authority.
Yeah, exactly.
That it makes sense.
And then everybody believes it. And then Darren Dalton's character goes, well, is there anybody on our side? And Powers Booth says, 600 million screaming Chinamen, which...
That's a weird thing for him to say.
Oh, my God, out of
Were people
nowhere.
still saying Chinamen in the 80s, I guess?
I guess it's okay, but even now, like on this podcast, I'm like, should I? But it's in the movie, so...
You're just pulling a quote.
Anyway, Daryl
I thought there were a billion.
I thought that, and then Andy goes, Powers Booth character goes, there were...
And then punctuates by like, throwing some flammable liquid on the fire.
Right, so he throws the booze on the fire. It goes up high.
For whatever reason, the Chinese decided they're staking their claim with America.
Yeah,
but I guess they did like massive nuclear strikes in China.
I read that. Yeah, that was like it's a good point. Like 400 million people are dead in 1 month. There's no way that many people died
For sure.
other than just like dropping nukes everywhere on China, right?
Which Russia sits on top of China like Canada sits on top of America.
Yeah.
And I think it's like there's such a long like militarized border or whatever. Especially back then, I think even Mongolia was aligned with Russia, and it was just like, oh yeah, they probably were like, look, if we're the last man standing and Soviet Union controls the rest of the globe, they're gonna just fall. Like they're gonna lean their weight on us, and we're gonna fall too.
There actually is a remarkable amount of research that went into this movie, given the nature of Cold War politics at the time, right?
Which everyone was probably aware of at the time, but watching it 40 years on, you're like, how does this make sense?
Right.
And then you do research and you're like, oh yeah, things were different 40 years ago.
Right, exactly. And that's the rabbit hole I went down too. Is like you watch the movie and you go, none of this happened. Like none of this even remotely came close to happening. But then you look at and it's the same kind of research that went into things like war games and so many of the Cold War movies of that era. It was a really different view of the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like we weren't able to look back on the Cold War with almost nostalgia because we were in the middle of it.
Sure.
And so it's so weird. I wish I was old enough to watch that movie as it was happening and then watch it again after the fact.
For sure.
Right?
Just seeing it brand new.
Exactly.
In the moment.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going into a whole rabbit hole here. It's a different rabbit hole.
Back to the Red Dawn.
Exactly. So anyway, Powers Booth character says that his family was in occupied Texas, and he doesn't know if they're alive or not, but he gets rumors that there was mass murders of civilians.
Which we've seen a little bit of that.
A little bit, yeah. Then we cut to, and it's later in the night, and everybody apparently loves Powers Booth at this point.
Absolutely.
With that voice, how can you not
What's not to love?
What's not to love about him? It says, okay, get ready. We're about to go hit a communist convoy. And then he goes, come on. The early bird gets the worm, right? Because Thomas Howell at this point is straight up. He is like.
He's bloodthirsty.
He's bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
There's no humanity left in him right now.
I didn't notice this bit before, but this is where Powers Booth wakes up and notices there's like a weird little boutonniere of wildflowers stuck in his jacket.
Yeah, and he smiles
or in his flight suit
bit.
or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, where'd this come from? More on that in a minute.
We'll get to that. Don't jump ahead. Anyway, so we cut ahead, and Powers Booth watches the Wolverines annihilate a convoy, just murders so many people.
They've got it down now, I feel like.
Yeah, no, they are professional. And I feel like Swayze's character sees Powers Booth go like, oh, shit. And he says, not bad for a bunch of kids, right? And I'm not sure. This has got to be ironic, right?
I couldn't tell if it was sarcasm or sincere.
But he says, your mama would be real proud.
Your mama would be real proud.
And I feel like, no, there's no way.
Yeah, I feel like it must be meant with a bit of sarcasm.
And I feel like this is an opportunity to talk about the origins of this character. Because as originally written...
Powers Booth?
Yeah, Powers Booth's character. as originally written, he was supposed to be a war-weary veteran who had actually become completely anti-war, right?
Yes.
And so the idea of him saying this sarcastically makes more sense. But when Powers Booth got cast as the role, he was like, no. I don't want him to be so anti-war. I want him to be more of like just a authentic military guy.
Right. Okay.
And so they rewrote a lot of his dialogue to justify him just being a regular military bro.
Which, who lets an actor come in and rewrite their character?
I didn't know Powers Booth had that much cachet in
clout.
'84 to justify that. But yeah, apparently he did, and they rewrote his entire character to be a lot more just pro-America.
Well, he turned from like First Blood Rambo to Rambo 2 and 3 Rambo, like burnout soldier to like no, but I'm also gonna kill all the commies in the world.
That's it. Like that is literally the perfect like analogy. So they finish the raid, and then that night, he tells the kids that he thinks they're really tough, but he says that Denver's been under siege for 3 months. And that people down there are like in fucking medieval conditions right now.
They're eating rats. They're eating their own dead.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's wild shit.
I mean, he fucking implies cannibalism, right? Like, it's fucking crazy. At which point he sees C. Thomas Howell's character like notching another kill on the butt of his rifle. And he says, all that hate's gonna burn you up, son.
Yeah.
Right? But then Thomas Howell has like the best retort. It keeps me warm. Ooh.
That's a good John Milius line.
It's a good John Milius line.
And then he's got the little butterfly knife. He's like flipping that shit around.
And at this point, Daryl's character, he asks Powers Booth's character if he thinks they're doing the right thing. And what does Booth do? He just walks off. He doesn't say anything ambiguous. Yeah. So we cut to the next morning, and Powers Booth is staring at a large rock formation, and all the names of the people that we know as characters from the movie who have been killed have been etched onto the rock. Right?
Arturo's parents were on the rock,
Yep.
and Swayze and Charlie Sheen's dad was on there, and C. Thomas Howell's dad.
And this is the first time we've seen the rock.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, this is a place that they keep coming back to.
Right. It must be near camp, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that this group of guerrilla fighters, they keep coming back to this particular rock. They've decided that this rock is where they're etching all of the victims' names, and it just seems like a liability to me. But I just roll with it because it's a powerful moment. It's a powerful moment.
Right. You feel like the Russians would find that and they'd be like, let's wait here.
We'll just wait here.
Wait here for a while.
Anyway, so Powers Booth.
It's weird.
Still with the flowers in his lapel, actually.
Yeah.
Leah Thompson character approaches somewhat at a distance, but close enough that she can hold up a similar small bouquet of flowers. They give each other flirty giggles, and Leah Thompson runs away. At this point, I'm thinking, what is going on with these
she's
characters?
like mute, like she can't speak or something. It's
agree.
a weird vibe.
It is a weird vibe that we've not thoroughly established at this point.
But we take it that she snuck into his tent while he was sleeping and planted the flowers on him.
Right, exactly. And so all of a sudden, there's this romantic subplot that's a little creepy on multiple levels.
Yeah.
A, because she's sort of stalking him, but also the age difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there it is. So Danny says, it looks like you've got a new friend.
Extra weird.
Extra weird. And then Powers Booth says, well, she's really quiet. And then Danny says, something bad happened to her. And we never address it. Never.
Another weird, unnecessary subplot.
It is just so weird, and it goes nowhere. So we cut to another establishing shot, and now we're in December.
Okay.
There's snow on the ground, and Powers Booth in camp is helping all the Wolverines develop a plan to attack the communist re-education camp where everybody's being held. My first question is why does an Air Force fighter pilot have so much skill with planning large-scale infiltrations?
You're right. If he's like just an enlisted man or something like that, it's unlikely that he's like been taught all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's got all sorts of like lingo for him and jargon.
So much jargon, so much lingo. And it's actually a great scene. He goes, "Any questions?"
What's a flank?
What's a flank? They proceed to inundate him with questions. And the last scene before it fades to black, he goes, "I need a drink." So we cut to, now we're at this sneak attack on the camp.
Okay.
A couple of rockets are fired. A truck crashes through a fence. And the commies scramble everywhere.
It's been a minute since we had some action.
It is. It's been kind of quiet for a while, so we're long overdue for some explosions and violence. And the Wolverines do not fail to deliver. They wipe out the commies just like they're just fish in a barrel. And I love this. When the truck comes in, Swayze leans over. All of the prisoners, he starts handing them rifles.
Yeah,
because
for
they've
sure.
been stockpiling them, I guess, right? and so then they go, and it's a full out fight, and there's multiple cuts to these like VTOL planes, right? They are like, I looked it up. The planes that are on set are actually fabrications of actual Russian VTOL planes. VTOL, for anybody who doesn't know, is vertical takeoff and landing. That's what that means.
Okay.
Right.
There's a weird thing that happened where the plane started to sort of ramp up, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on right
exactly.
now?
That's why I looked it up, because it seemed so weird. They actually, Milius, again, he's a big military guy. He did a ton of research.
Okay.
The planes that were there were replicas of actual Russian VTOLs. Which is why when you're watching the movie, the one lifts up like this.
Yeah.
It's because it's trying to take off. But anyway, we keep cutting back to these planes. Someone's trying to take off. They throw grenades into it. Anyway, so it's just a complete rout for the Russians, right?
Yes.
You know,
that was the high. I feel like that's like the high point of the movie for the Wolverines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is that's the peak of our successes. We freed all these people. Like, the captives are running off into the woods or whatever like that.
Yeah. And at the end of it, when the dust settles on it, what I can't help think is, why are there a bunch of fighter jets at a prison camp?
Yeah, no, they definitely were. It was odd. The Soviet tactics were strange. I like the moment when they're driving off and Powers Booth has like acquired a new bottle of liquor.
Yes,
it's like Das Vidanya.
Das Vidanya. So anyway, I think that's a pretty good stopping point.
Yes, absolutely. I'm spent.
Oh my God, there was so much that happened. All of a sudden, the Wolverines have finally come into their own.
For sure. So there's, I guess, a whole lot more to happen, but so much is happening also.
Oh my God, yeah.
Once it's just like nonstop sort of just action happening.
Yeah.
For the remainder of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to hear more about what's happening, you're gonna have to come back.
Oh my God.
Next week, because Eric and I are gonna take you the rest of the way. We may or may not be coherent and sober, but we will be here. We hope you'll be here too, and we'll be back.